everybody should learn to keep things a little bit more local.
We started with 75 shares our first year, and now we're up to about 1,000 shares.
Well, I've always been interested in growing vegetable seed.
Branding is enormously important.
You know, in order for people to really buy it, they need to try it.
There are a lot of challenges. Like a food processing business is very logistical.
One of the reasons we exist is to get our community to eat whole, organic food.
GAP, or Good Agricultural Practices, are voluntary farming practices that minimize the risk of microbial contamination of fresh produce, focusing on land use, personal hygiene practices, and water quality, as well as packaging and handling. GAP certification is a third-party audit that confirms a farm is implementing the necessary steps for assuring food safety. The WSDA has created a project called Bridging the Gaps, which brings together farmers, auditors, and others within the agricultural industry to discuss various techniques for ensuring safe food practices.
When we come out on a farm to do a farm tour together with auditors and farmers and educators like ourselves, we're able to just to have a really great conversation where everybody starts to understand the needs of the other parties involved, so they can understand what the buyers are looking for and why they're requiring a food safety standard, and for the auditors to understand the realities on some of the smaller diversified farms that we have, and for the farms to learn from each other and to be able to share the great practices on their farm already. You can do it by paces or whatever else seems to make sense as a practical measure on your farm. And the idea is simply that what is within this area, all of your workers have been trained to do this if they see a problem, so to not harvest in that area. The third option is to use running water, and at that point you need to consider drainage and expense.
Otra de las opciones, hay muchos productores que piensan que no o no se sienten que deberían de usar aditivos en el agua.
In 2011, the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, was signed into law, which, when finalized, will require higher levels of food safety planning and documentation of those practices to mitigate the risk of fresh produce resulting in foodborne illness. Ultimately, FSMA will affect growers, packers, shippers, and processors of fresh produce. Those farms that have already worked on good agricultural practices and food safety will be in a good position to meet the standard.
Food safety planning is really essential in the marketplace in order to mitigate foodborne illness risks. Even one illness can affect a whole industry. So it's very important that we mitigate risk and reduce foodborne illness for industries as a whole. What we have now is we have good agricultural practices, which are suggestions that help prevent foodborne illness. Those are not mandatory in any way. Farmers elect to do those. They can elect to have an audit scheme to see how they are doing. So farms are doing those based on their customer demand or their need to have a good food safety plan in place.
The WSDA encourages all farms, including small to mid-sized farms, to follow good agricultural practices and start to document the procedures that they follow, which should help to prepare for the upcoming required Food Safety Modernization Act rules.
We're hearing from a lot more buyers in a lot of different places that they are concerned about food safety and the food they're purchasing, and they want a way to ask growers what their practices are and how that relates to ensuring food safety when it gets to them or to their consumers.
Wholesale and institutional markets can represent an excellent market diversification strategy to farms that produce more than they can sell at direct market outlets. With the ability to provide a documented food safety plan and third-party certification, small to mid-sized farms can demonstrate to potential wholesale and institutional buyers that they are well prepared to operate in this marketplace.
We know that most growers are using really great food safety practices, and some of the challenge is to document that appropriately. So we recommend to those growers that do not currently have a food safety certification or haven't been through an audit to provide documentation that they figure out a way to put a simple food safety plan in place and to be able to document that, put together something that they can share with a buyer to say, here's what we're doing on our farm that really improves the safety of this product, and then you can have confidence in us.
Preparing for a GAP audit can be quite simple and often consists of documenting the food safety practices that are already used on the farm.
You know, most of what we see is that people are doing the right thing. They sometimes lack the documentation. So with the resources that they have, if they continue doing what they do, and I think we're going to be close to ready for an audit.
Before applying for GAP certification, a documented food safety program should be in place, which can consist of, but are not limited to, the following items. Worker health and hygiene. Is there clean water available for hand washing, as well as drinking water that meets the safe drinking water standards? Are there restrooms readily available and supplied with water that meets the safe drinking water standards, as well as liquid hand soap and single-use towels? Are smoking and eating areas properly designated and separated from the product being handled? Water usage, such as where is your water coming from? Are you testing your water so you know what kinds of microbes are present? How are you preventing possible contamination of the water from outside sources? Keep in mind that the risk associated with water varies depending on the source, with the greatest risk associated with surface waters and the least risk associated with municipal water. Risk may also differ depending on the application method. Animal, wildlife, and livestock protection. What measures are you taking to monitor animal intrusions and potential risk of contamination? And if animal contamination is found on your property, how are you marking the contaminated area and ensuring that the produce affected will not be distributed to consumers? Are you using manure or biosolids? And if so, has it been properly treated and stored to minimize the risk of contamination? And are the proper timelines being observed between applying manures and harvest? Land use. Conduct a risk assessment of your farm fields, identifying potential sources of contamination, such as adjacent animal production facilities and any flooding events that may have contaminated the soil. If the risk assessment identifies the need, take a soil sample. Field harvesting. Are you properly cleaning and sanitizing all equipment during harvest to prevent contamination? Is your equipment being used solely for harvesting? Are damaged or soiled containers being discarded? And are products moving out of the field uniquely identified for easy traceback? The washing packing line. Does the water used for washing or packing meet safe drinking water standards? Are you periodically sampling or changing the water used for processing your produce? Are you cleaning the packing facility on a daily basis, then documenting that cleaning? And finally, storage and transportation. Are packing containers and other packing materials properly covered and stored to prevent possible contamination from birds, rodents, and other potential elements? Do you consistently inspect and clean trucks before transporting produce? The GAP audit includes additional and more detailed requirements. Please visit Bridging the Gaps online to learn more.
All farmers are food handlers. The food that we grow is going to be consumed by another person. So it's very important that we have safe practices on our farms to make sure that that food is as safe as possible.
Food safety risks exist at all levels of agriculture. There are birds, there are animals, there are personal hygiene mistakes that can contaminate the food. In smaller local food systems, we haven't had big outbreaks, but it only takes one to really cause concern and create sort of a big shift in even the smaller local farmers market economy. So we really hope that people will adopt these practices on their farms so that we don't have that concern.
For small farms, it can seem intimidating to think about food safety plans and the upcoming regulations with the proposed Food Safety Modernization Act. We can do this.
For an extensive outline of the necessary documented policies and procedures, log on to our website at the following link or call us at 360-902-2052.